Alright, so Canon have obviously just had the launch of their C50, which is a mini cinema camera, which probably should have been launched years and years and years ago. This is my little quick take on it. Now, you'll know me as a guy who shoots a lot of Blackmagic. The fact of the matter is that years ago, I actually ended up on Canons for some of my first cameras, you know, when I was in the early days trying to get that shallow depth of field thing. I was on a 550D, and then I got a 60D, and I got Magic Lantern and all of that. So I was with Canon for a while, and I kind of traveled on that journey and enjoyed it. You know, there was a lot of stuff that I did with those cameras, and I still have Canon bodies knocking around, and some of what I do commercially requires that I shoot on camera systems that fit within a certain TV station's spec, and a lot of these specs are chronically out of date, absolutely archaic, but there we are. And for that, I've ended up with a C70, and you know, that's a good camera, it does what it does, but I think it's indicative of the way that Canon has sort of existed for the past 5 years or so, where we've had these big chunky cameras from them, which, you know, they got like internal NDs, they're bomb proof, they just work, all of that. Well, whatever you want to throw at it is the rationale. The fact is they've just been big, just big. They didn't have anything like the FX3, the FX30, and if you did start to think FX3, FX30, then you were more in this kind of realm where it was a mirrorless camera, which wasn't quite doing the thing. It was a smaller body, but maybe they didn't have all of the kind of compression codecs in there, all of the log profiles, or maybe you had overheating issues, or perhaps it just cost a fortune. One way or the other, I think that they didn't have a very good answer to those cameras. And I'd go as far as say, even something like the R5C, which I know some people have used them, I know some people have got them, they're good, but they're so big, and they were kind of over the top at what they were doing. It wasn't like it was a nimble camera that allowed you to get lots of shots. It just seemed like this clunky beast of a camera. Now the C70 is too tall. It's massive. It's ridiculous. I really don't enjoy the form factor of it for most of the things that I shoot. I like the fact it's got internal NDs. I like the fact that the battery lasts for ages. The SD card shooting, you know, SD cards are kind of expensive if you get the fast ones that can do the raw light. But I do think that they've needed this. Now, whether or not this is actually the right answer at the right time is a whole other question. We've got Nikon, whatever you want to call it, launching something tomorrow after the Red takeover. That's interesting, and I'm going to be having a look at that, see what actually we're getting out of that camera. Now, I think that when I'm looking at this launch video, there are some things in there that piqued my interest. I don't know whether they're useful or not. You've got the ability to record to an SD card and the CF Express, I'm not sure whether it's A or B, but CF Express card, and do a different aspect ratio onto each. So say on the SD card, you're going to a vertical crop because you've got that open gate full frame sensor. So we're taking a vertical crop, and then on the other one, we're taking a widescreen. I can't remember what the exact aspect ratio was. It 17:9, they said. Whatever it is, whatever the limitations that are, will come out in the wash. But basically having those two separated aspect ratios, I guess the assumption being that you're going to hand off editing of the vertical stuff, the social stuff, to a different team, perhaps to the actual campaign. And I can kind of see the rationale. You don't have to process it, you don't have to think about it, it's just there's the vertical cut. But I'm going to be honest as well, how often do those things work out that neatly in a real shoot in real life? How often do you actually have to reframe a little bit because whatever you're shooting nudges one way or the other because you're kind of trying to frame for both, but maybe the vertical one drifts a little bit one way or the other. So it's a nice thought, but the actual real life practical implication I do wonder about. They did have a little mention of the C400, and that's going to be getting the same open gate recording mode as the C50, so I'm sure a lot of people will be pleased to see that. IBIS has been something ever since the leaks people have been talking about and kind of feeling a little bit angry about, I think is the way I would put it. I have a strange mixed opinion on this. I disagree with them. They're wrong. IBIS is not something you want on a cinema camera. That is for many different reasons, precision being one of them. Actually having the camera point where you want it to point, look where you want it to look, frame what you want it to frame with intention. I know most people don't work in those terms, but that is what we should be doing. We should be framing up and we should be getting the shot that we want, not having it just drift around as we're doing it. And there are other ways that you can stabilize things with precision. And if you're doing vehicle rigs, then having the sensor floating, that's a terrible idea. You don't want that. You really don't want that. But the vehicle rig thing, I think, is niche, although a lot of people are kind of trying to step into that world, terrifyingly sometimes. And I think that at this point, I said I was conflicted about this, or I had two opinions. I think that the fact they don't have this in there is a mistake, because the vocal majority are the run and gunners, the people who just want to pick it up and go away and off and with a lens and just have the IBIS built in because that's what their mirrorless cameras have given them for years or whatever. I think they're the vocal majority. I think they're probably the bulk of people who are going to buy this camera, or the bulk of people who could be convinced to buy this camera. So I think they're the ones that you should have placated with it, because it's at the lower end of the price spectrum, because it's fitting into that Sony niche. Not including IBIS at this point is a mistake. Even though I completely get it and I kind of agree with it, I think that you're just going to piss off the people who are going to whinge about it, basically. And the other people who perhaps would be using the camera in the vehicle rig, and God, yes, it would be nice to have a small camera to rig, but you got the C80, and the C80, of all the things I've said, the C70 is a clunky big thing, so is the C80, but you could probably force the people at that end of the spectrum to have to use the C80 to avoid having the IBIS, because that would be the rational decision for them. You know, pick the one that doesn't have the IBIS built in if you want all of those things that I've just said, rather than convince the unwashed masses that they don't want IBIS in their little camera. They're going to go around and point and shoot and just run and gun and not thinking about what they're shooting, just wanting it stable. Then I'm not being fair on this. That sounds really, really harsh, but I'm being extreme with it. Basically, I think it's a mistake from Canon's point of view. Nice to have two different media slots. CF Express, I much prefer to SD cards. SD cards, stupidly expensive these days, and I would say that if you are choosing one, just go with the CF Express, because yeah, you're going to be able to access all of the different resolutions and recording rates, you know, compression, whatever it is, raw light. That will be easier. Just get the CF Express. I'm kind of over SD cards a lot at this point, I feel. Nice, there's lots of rigging points on the body. Nice, we've got timecode in there, the full-size HDMI. Timecode looks like a mini SDI port, which, yeah, fine. No worries about that particularly. It just means you've got to have the right adapter cable. But most of the time with timecode, you're adapting anyway from whatever 3.5mm to SDI or mini SDI or 3.5mm or some kind of LEMO pin, whatever the port you've got, you're going to have adapter cables. So I'm not really too fussed about that. Good to see mounting points around it. It does still look kind of chunky. It's still obviously got those fans and everything built in to keep the cooling going on that camera. I think it's going to be interesting to see how these sell, and whether they come with that top handle with the XLR attachments and everything built in. I would personally love to have this on some of the shoots that I am going out and doing with the cooking shows, the TV stuff where I have to use the Canon cameras. I think the fact of the matter is that if I was buying a second camera, I'd probably just be buying a second C70 now, because the price would be a little bit lower. I'd probably get all of the batteries thrown in. I know that it's not the same sensor tech. I know that it's not full frame like this is, and I know that it's bigger, but I think for me, the cost versus the benefits, although I would love to have the smaller body, at this point, it's probably just not worth it for those shoots for me. But everyone's going to be different, and certainly if you're running gimbal stuff, then this makes a lot of sense. Stay tuned for the Nikon stuff tomorrow, and also there is that mystery L-mount camera floating around that was kind of accidentally shared, blurred out a bit, and then deleted. So we may be seeing something new from someone who does L-mount. That could be Panasonic. I'm thinking maybe not, but perhaps hell, it could be Blackmagic. Maybe there is a new pocket camera coming out that no one has caught an inkling of until this point. It wouldn't be a massive surprise. They are known just to throw things out and no one expects it, and they are heavily in the L-mount. So it could be that. We will know very soon with IBC, no doubt. But for now, thanks for watching. Drop your comments below. Have a little bit of an argument. Do you think they should have IBIS? Do you think they should have other things in this camera like NDs? There are no NDs, and that would be a massive benefit, a massive reason to get this camera over, say, an FX3 if you had all the ND filtration built in. But then everyone who's in their systems, Sony or Canon, they're pretty heavily locked into those systems, you know, with lenses and workflows and just the tribal mentality of color science and all the rest of it. So have a little fight down below and I will dive in and try and mediate.